In a world where men run the show, women basically have two choices: obey or rebel. But here's the catch: rebelling comes with a price. And in this film, we see four women trying to break free. One jumps off a rooftop. Yeah, seriously. One escapes to a mysterious orchard. One thinks marriage is the answer. And one is just straight up done with men because, well, trauma. Women Without Men is not your typical love story. There are no badass heroines turning into revolutionaries. No happy endings where everyone finds their freedom. This is a harsh reality check. A story about women struggling to carve out a space for themselves in a world that refuses to let them breathe. And spoiler alert, not all of them make it. All right, before we dive into the drama, let's set the stage. The year is 1953, and Iran is basically on fire, politically speaking. The country's prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, is on a mission. His big idea? Nationalizing Iran's oil. Sounds fair, right? Iran's oil should belong to Iranians, not some foreign corporations making bank off it. But guess who wasn't happy about this? The British, of course. At the time, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, AIOC, now known as BP, had a tight grip on Iran's oil industry. Mossadegh, being the no-nonsense nationalist that he was, said, "Nah, we're taking back what's ours." This move pissed off the Brits so much that they ran crying to the US together. They pulled some CIA MI6 magic and came up with Operation Ajax, a top-secret plan to overthrow Mossadegh. And guess what? It worked. In August 1953, Mossadegh was arrested, thrown in jail, and Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who had briefly fled like a scared puppy, was put back on the throne with full Western support. From that point on, Iran became an absolute monarchy under the Shah, who ruled with an iron fist. Now, I gotta admit, leaders like Mossadegh, the ones who stand up against both Western and Eastern hegemony, they earn my respect. Whether you agree with his politics or not, you gotta admire the guts it takes to tell powerful countries to back off. Life as a woman in 1950s Iran? Yeah, let's just say it was a never-ending nightmare of societal pressure, religious conservatism, and men thinking they own you. In a world where men make the rules, women had two options: accept their fate or fight back. And in Women Without Men, fighting back meant either running away or straight up dying. Directed by Shirin Neshat and Shoja Azari, this film follows the lives of four Iranian women, all struggling in their own way as the country itself goes through massive political chaos. While Iran is caught in the turmoil of a US-backed coup overthrowing its democratic government, these women are fighting their own battles against an oppressive society. But, spoiler alert, it's not exactly a fairy tale. Their fight for freedom? Yeah, it's messy, tragic, and, in some cases, downright brutal. Fakhri, the general's wife who's so done. When a midlife crisis leads to buying a whole garden. And finally, we have Fakhri, a wealthy woman in her 50s, living what looks like a perfect life. But let's be real, it's far from it. At one point in the film, she's at a fancy award ceremony with her husband Shadi, a high-ranking general who's getting yet another medal to add to his ego collection. But then, bam! She runs into Abbas, an old flame from her past. And guess what? Abbas never really moved on. You can practically see the what could have been look in his eyes. But here's the twist. Abbas and Shadi are like polar opposites. Abbas is all about Western modernization, while Shadi? Full-on ultranationalist, anti-West, I'm the boss you shut up kind of guy. You can already imagine how awkward that introduction was. And Fakhri? She's just done with all of it. You know what? I'm out. Being married to a powerful man didn't mean Fakhri had power. She was treated like property, something to be owned and controlled. And to make things worse, her husband had the audacity to say, "If you can't satisfy me, I'll just marry another woman." Excuse me? Instead of crying about it, Fakhri pulls the ultimate power move. She leaves. Not just leaves. She buys a whole damn garden in the countryside, far away from the suffocating noise of Tehran. And this isn't just some retirement home for the rich. This garden becomes a sanctuary, a place where women escaping the patriarchy can finally breathe. The garden, a safe haven for the broken. By some twist of fate or destiny, or maybe just the magic of cinema, all three women end up here. We have Munis, a woman with more political curiosity than patience for men. While her peers are worrying about marriage and acting like proper ladies, Munis is glued to the radio, obsessed with political news like it's the latest gossip. She wants to be part of the resistance against the coup, but there's one huge problem. She lives with her ultra-conservative brother, Amir Khan, who thinks a woman's only purpose in life is to get married and shut up. One day, Amir decides it's time for Munis to get hitched. He sets her up with a guy, expecting her to be all excited. But Munis? Ice cold. Doesn't even bother coming downstairs. This, of course, sends Amir into a rage. He storms into the room, yanks out the radio cable, and starts ranting like a man possessed. Munis just stands there, sighing, because deep down she knows freedom isn't coming for her anytime soon. And then there's Faiza, Munis's best friend. Unlike Munis, Faiza isn't exactly out here trying to change the world. She's a firm believer in tradition, religion, and, most importantly, virginity. Yep, for her, a woman's worth is measured by whether or not she's pure. She's got a massive crush on Amir. Yes, that Amir. And she's absolutely devastated when she hears he's planning to marry a woman named Parvin. Even worse, Parvin isn't a virgin. Faiza is horrified. She starts bad-mouthing Parvin like a jealous high schooler, totally convinced that any woman who isn't untouched is basically worthless. Little does she know, life is about to teach her a very painful lesson about her beliefs. But we'll get to that later. At the beginning of the movie, Munis is standing on a rooftop, and then she jumps. Just like that. End of story? Nope. Because before this, we see another scene, her sitting on the floor, completely helpless, while Amir verbally curb stomps her, even threatening to break her legs if she dares leave the house. These two moments side by side, it's a brutal contrast. On the floor, she's powerless, but on the rooftop, she's in control. She finally gets to make a choice about her own life, except, well, that choice is to end it. Most movies portray death as tragic, but Women Without Men flips the script. Here, death is liberation. Munis has spent her whole life trapped under patriarchal rules, so in her mind, dying is the only way she can truly live. And then there's the moment she actually jumps. As she falls, the sound of the adhan, Islamic call to prayer, which usually reminds her of all the religious restrictions she's forced to follow, suddenly stops. Like, boom, silence. The world, with all its rules and suffocating expectations, just vanishes. Wait, she what? But hold up. This isn't your standard tragic ending where the character dies and that's that. Nope, Munis goes full supernatural on us. Because guess what? She dies and then casually comes back to life. Here's how it happens. After she jumps, her own brother, yep, the same guy who made her life miserable, buries her in the backyard, just like that. No funeral, no authorities, just shovel, dirt, done. Out of sight, out of mind. Meanwhile, Munis's bestie, Faiza, is out here being the ultimate pick-me girl, obsessed with Amir, and devastated that he's about to marry someone else. So what does she do? Cry it out like a normal person? Nah, she goes to a witch doctor. Yep, miss, I'm so religious. Faiza turns straight up superstitious, buying a magical charm to hex Amir's wedding. Hypocrite much? All's fair in love and black magic, I guess. And then, while trying to bury the charm near Munis's house, Faiza suddenly hears something. Munis? You good down there? She starts digging, and boom, Munice is still alive. Which, honestly, plot hole of the century. Like, how long was she buried for? Hours? Days? And how is she just chilling under there, waiting for someone to dig her up like a forgotten houseplant? But the wildest part? Munice doesn't scream, doesn't run back home, doesn't even try to press charges on Amir for, basically murdering her. Nope. She just dusts herself off and casually heads to a cafe to catch up on political news, like it's just another Tuesday. Munice 2.0, the activist era. At this cafe, she meets some dude from the Communist Party, and suddenly, her life takes a total 180. The once oppressed woman, buried alive by her own family, is now out in the streets, marching, protesting, and fighting against the government. She's finally free. Or at least she thinks she is. And here's the kicker. Munice isn't the only one searching for freedom in the most unexpected ways. In Women Without Men, the Chador, a full-body veil, isn't just clothing. It's a symbol of oppression. And in this film, every woman who wants to be free has to take it off first. After her death, yes, with quotation marks because she literally comes back to life, Munice doesn't just sit around haunting people or floating through walls. Nope, she's out here still doing what she loves, listening to the radio and joining the communist resistance against the Shah's tyranny. Even in the afterlife, she refuses to rest. Talk about dedication. This is where the film plays with magical realism. Munice's resurrection isn't meant to be taken literally. It's a metaphor for how she finally gets to live life on her own terms. Only after dying is she truly alive. Now let's talk about Fazeh, Munice's friend, who starts off as your typical good girl. She believes that a woman's ultimate goal in life is marriage, and she has her dream husband all picked out, Amir Khan, Munice's conservative walking red flag of a brother. To her, marrying a religious man means safety, stability, and a happy life. She's so obsessed with him that she's willing to mold herself into society's version of an ideal wife. But life isn't a rom-com. One day, while walking alone near a cafe, Faiza gets chased down by two strangers. And just like that, her worst nightmare comes true. She's assaulted. And in her world, that means she's ruined. See, in this twisted society, a woman's entire worth is tied to her virginity. Lose that, and boom, she's seen as worthless, damaged goods. Faiza is crushed, believing no man will ever want her again. Munice, being the badass ghost activist she is, refuses to let Faiza drown in her shame. She takes her away from the city, and somehow, plot hole alert, they end up in this mysterious orchard that later becomes a safe haven for them. And this is where Fazih's real journey begins. Haunted by shame, she struggles to see herself as anything but tainted. But this moment forces her to realize something. Her worth shouldn't be defined by a single moment of trauma. And more importantly, maybe the life she always dreamed of was never really meant for her to begin with. At first, Faiza sees the world through a rigid, religious lens, rules, purity, and obedience. But after her assault, she's forced to confront the brutal reality. Women aren't just fighting against outdated social norms, they're also fighting to survive in a world that doesn't protect them. As she starts living with Fakhri, another key character in the film, Faiza begins to change. Not in a throwaway religion kind of way, but in a I deserve happiness outside of oppressive traditions kind of way. Fakhri, who's older and much more experienced, becomes a sort of mentor for Faiza, teaching her that life isn't just about following rules, it's also about finding joy. She basically tells her, look, sis, you can't let the world tell you who you are. You gotta decide that for yourself. And then comes the most satisfying scene in Faiza's entire arc. One day, Amir, the same guy she once dreamed of marrying, shows up with an offer, but not the kind she expected. I'll take you as my second wife. Oh, and don't worry, my first wife will be your servant. Excuse me, what? Faiza looks at him like he just offered her a buy one get one free marriage package. Oh, so what happens when you marry a third wife? Do I move down the ranking system? Do I start fetching tea for wife number 3? Old Faizy might have actually considered this, but this Faizy, she's done. She doesn't wear her chador anymore, which Amir sees as proof she's lost her way. But for Faiza, it's more than just a change in fashion. It's her saying, I'm not that girl anymore. And you? You're not in my future. If Munis and Faiza are struggling against family and society, Zarin is dealing with something way harsher. Out of all the women in Women Without Men, she's the most broken. She's a sex worker in a brothel, but emotionally, she checked out a long time ago. Every day she moves like a puppet, forced to smile and entertain men who see her as nothing more than a body to use. At the brothel, the madam never stops yelling at her. Want to sit for a second? Nope. Need a break? What are you doing? That thing between your legs isn't paying rent. Get back to work. Her world is just constant noise, men barking orders, demanding her attention, treating her like property. Then one day, something weird happens. She gets a client who's unlike any other, not because he's kind or gentle. No, this dude is terrifying for a different reason. He has no face. Like, literally, just a blank, featureless void where a human face should be. This isn't some low-budget CGI fail. This is Zarin's mind-breaking. At this point, men don't even register as individuals to her anymore. They're just faceless figures, all the same, all taking from her. This realization hits her like a truck, and for the first time, she truly sees how inhuman her life has become. And she snaps. She runs. She doesn't know where she's going. She just knows she has to get out. Zarin's escape leads her to a bathhouse, where she does what we all do when we've hit rock bottom. She takes the longest, most aggressive shower of her life. She scrubs her skin like she's trying to erase every touch, every fingerprint, every man who ever claimed a piece of her. It's painful to watch, because deep down, we know no amount of soap can wash away the things she's been through. But still, she scrubs and scrubs. And then comes one of the most haunting moments in the film. After leaving the bathhouse, she walks past a group of veiled women, all crying and wailing. They don't look at her. They don't speak to her. But their pain, she feels it. These aren't just random mourners. They represent every woman who's ever suffered. Every woman who's ever been trapped in a world that sees them as objects, not people. Their cries echo through the air, a collective grief, a sorrow too heavy to carry alone. But Zarin doesn't stop. She keeps walking. She chooses silence over suffering. One of the most genius things about this film is how it uses sound, or the lack of it, to show where power lies. In the male-dominated world, it's all noise, orders, commands, yelling, the brothel madam screaming at Zarin, men talking over women, a world that never stops demanding. But in the orchard, silence. The world of men, with all its rules, expectations, and oppression, can't reach this place. For the first time in her life, Zarin is free. Zarin, after running herself to exhaustion, is found unconscious by the river. She's taken in, given care, and for the first time in forever, she's safe. Faiza, after all the trauma she's endured, finally gets to exist without shame, without judgment. Here, they don't have to listen to men barking orders. They don't have to live in fear. They just exist. The garden equals a mini paradise, but not a permanent one. Women Without Men makes it painfully clear. Freedom for women doesn't come easy. Sometimes they have to die for it. Sometimes they have to run until they find it. The garden in the film isn't just a backdrop. It's a symbol, a place where women can finally live without fear. But, and here's the heartbreaking part, it's not a real solution. Zarin, who is finally starting to recover, suddenly falls deathly ill. Why? because she sees the gardener and realizes he looks just like the faceless men from her past. Her old trauma crashes down on her like a wave, draining every last bit of her strength until she's gone. Fakhri, meanwhile, gets a brutal wake-up call. Soldiers storm into her garden looking for enemies of the state. But the moment they realize she's the wife of a general, they back off. And just like that, Fakhri is reminded of the harsh truth. No matter how free she feels, the world still sees her as the general's wife. And Faiza? Oh, she gets hit with the plot twist of her life. Munis's brother, yes, the guy she was obsessed with, suddenly shows up and proposes to her as his second wife. Once upon a time, this would have been her dream come true. But now, she's changed. She finally understands that being someone's second choice in a patriarchal setup isn't freedom. It's just another prison. So she says no. And Munis? Well, she's back on the roof. Munis thought she had found her freedom by joining the resistance. She believed in the cause. She fought for it. But in the end, the revolution failed. The government cracked down. Her comrades were arrested or executed. And she was left with a chilling realization. Maybe there is no true freedom in this world. In the final scene, we see her standing on the rooftop once again. Her voice echoes in the background. The only freedom from suffering is to be free from this world. And then she jumps. The harsh truth? Freedom comes at a cost? Munis, the real parkour queen. Okay, let's talk about Munis. This girl has a natural talent for jumping off things. If she were born in this era, she'd probably be a professional parkour athlete, or at least a Hollywood stunt-woman. Hell, if someone sent her to Indonesia, she'd be breaking records in Nias's stone-jumping competition. Imagine that. One day she's flipping off rooftops in Tehran. The next she's on a national tour jumping over ancient monoliths. Munis, the undisputed queen of aerial acrobatics. But jokes aside, her story is dark as hell. Then we have Faizi, whose story is the definition of unfair. This girl spent her whole life trying to be pure because society told her that a woman's worth is tied to a piece of skin. Like, really? It's 1953, not the Stone Age. But nope, people still treated virginity like a house ownership certificate. Lose it, and your value drops instantly. And the worst part? She didn't even do anything wrong. She was assaulted, and yet she was the one carrying the shame. If she had been with a decent guy, someone with more than 2 functioning brain cells, he would have understood that none of this was her fault. But nah, society was still busy labeling women like damaged goods, while men could do whatever they wanted. Honestly, though, if we're being real, we all know people still think like this today. It's just that now, the shaming happens in group chats and anonymous social media accounts. Zarin. Retired, not redeemed. Now, let's talk about Zarin. Out of all the women, she probably had the hardest life. A child forced into sex work, treated like nothing more than a product to be used and discarded. But what's interesting is that she didn't leave the brothel because she found God or had some huge moral revelation. Nah. She left because she was just done. Sometimes you don't need a dramatic philosophical reason to walk away from a toxic situation. Sometimes you're just tired of the bullshit. And honestly, that's reason enough. Fakhri, Midaj woman who had enough. Fakhri, the classic rich but miserable wife. She had money, a status, a powerful husband, but at what cost? Her husband, the ultra-nationalist general, treated her like a trophy, expected her to be a bedroom performer, and basically told her that if she couldn't keep up, he'd just get another wife. Brah! This man was built like a retired army tank and still expected his wife to move like a belly dancer? Listen, aging is real. Women's bodies change. You can't expect a woman in her 50s to have the same flexibility she did in her 20s. If she tries twerking too hard at that age, she might pull a muscle and end up in physical therapy. And don't even get me started on the lubrication situation. Let's just say things aren't as smooth as they used to be. If this dude wanted a non-stop pleasure machine, maybe he should have invested in some futuristic Tenga technology instead of threatening his wife with a new bride. Oh, your wife can't keep up with your stamina? No worries, sir. Welcome to 2025. We have Tenga, the ultimate solution for lonely generals everywhere. Adjustable speeds, self-lubricating magic, and, wait, why am I giving a sales pitch for sex toys? Moving on. Women Without Men isn't just about individual women standing up against oppression. It's about a system that's so deeply embedded in society that no matter where a woman turns, there's always another wall blocking her way. And as long as patriarchy still exists, as long as women's freedom is seen as something too much, stories like this will keep happening, not just in movies, but in real life. So the big question remains, will women ever be truly free? Let's talk about it. If you love films that aren't afraid to expose brutal realities, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more deep film breakdowns, and let's discuss in the comments. Do you think women can ever truly be free in a world that still favors men? Asterisk, asterisk. Let's start the conversation. See you in the next one.